Hello and welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 295. We've nearly got a full house on this Monday night, missing Joel and Kelly, but I got Gary, Declan and Steve. Nice to see you all, boys. Probably our last podcast before Christmas, but obviously it's been a very busy week, a happy week for lots of West Tigers fans. But I'll start with you, Steve. You've been quite upset with my work ethic so far on the podcast the last few months, but I was there on Thursday at Concord for the photo shoot. I didn't see you there.
Well, I bought a ticket. I jumped on a plane. I flew down. I got to Sydney. I got in a taxi. I was on my way to Concord, and Joel said he couldn't wait any longer for us, and you took the photo, so I got in a plane and went home again. So,
yeah, well,
thanks, boys.
He was centre stage there, Gary, wasn't he? I didn't expect. I've got to be honest. I know a lot of the sports journalists, not personally, just by reading some of their dribble and stuff. But Sydney Morning Herald, and I met the guy, and he was a nice guy. I think it was Jonathan Drennan, and I didn't click with me that he wasn't a sports guy. He was a news guy. So it actually, I think, it ended up on. There was a little picture on the front page, and it was on page 3 or page 5, which was nice.
Yeah, it was great. What actually impressed me most was to see you and Joel kind of in the same area, because we can't get you on the pod together. I thought there must have been some tension. But you were pushed to the back, standing down the back of that photo, Eddie. So I thought Joel may have put you in your place during the photo shoot.
Yes, well, you would have noticed that me and Joel were actually standing apart. Kelly was in the middle separating us. So maybe those rumours won't be put to bed. But Declan, obviously you couldn't make it. But on a serious note, it's been nice just the last 4 or 5 days. Not that it's anything about us, but it's just been nice to see, I'd say 90% plus of the supporter base happy and excited. And there were lots of nice messages. I scrolled through a lot of the messages on both the podcast forum and the official forum, and lots of people want to thank us. And even though it's, Holman Barnes are the ones who've commissioned this review and got the job done and acted on the recommendations, it's nice to just see Tigers fans for once almost in unison and singing the praises of the Holman Barnes Group for acting on these recommendations.
Yeah, it's great to see. I think it's important to say thank you to everyone that signed the petition, because without them, it would have been more difficult to get the Holman Barnes Group to have a look at what we had to say. So thanks to everyone who signed the petition, and obviously thanks to Steve and Gary and Joe and Kelly and everyone who were kind of the spokespeople for it as well, and kind of got it in the right direction. So massive congratulations to them. But yeah, I think it's just great to see everyone, probably 99% of people, in a good mood in the online space. Obviously online you can't really gauge if that's the common thread, but you'd imagine that most Tigers fans are happy. And I've gotten lots of messages as well. In fact, even my dad got a message from a few West Tigers fans saying how happy they are. And with all the rumours that people have renewed their memberships or have signed up after a long time, it's good to see. And I think it's a good time to be involved with the club. And I think it's made me even more excited for next year, even though we're going into the season with pretty much the same squad.
In regards to that membership issue, I'm quite well informed that the memberships took a massive jump after the announcement, that a lot of people started ringing the club and renewing, people who said they were no longer going to be members. So that in fact did happen. So all those people out there who were using that as a silent protest, I really commend you for putting your dollars where your mouth has been and re-signing up once the action we all wanted to see took place.
Steve, it was, I think it was you it might have been back in June or July, where we were just tossing around some ideas about how could we improve the West Tigers, and you were the one that suggested the review. And, to your credit, I think you and Gary in particular, you guys had the most to lose out of this, because you did have good relationships with the club. You worked with the club with the Ambush and you had meetings with them over the past couple of years. I was going to say, what are your emotions? My initial emotion on Tuesday was sort of euphoria. I can't believe this. They've gone the whole hog. They've actually wiped out the whole board and done everything that was recommended. And then it's sort of 4 or 5 days later, I was just more sort of feeling relief that it happened. Where do you sit in terms of how you feel nearly a week on?
Yeah, look, initially it was surprised that they went the full gamut. I was hopeful that they would. And I have to say that there's some feeling of pride in there that we've had something to do with this, and so you feel good about that. And the fact that you can have a voice, that you can just be an average punter like we are and still have an impact. But the overriding emotion for me is hope, because I was seriously losing interest in the footy and the club towards the end of last season. I voiced that a number of times, and it wasn't just an emotional outburst. I was really struggling to want to watch Tigers games, and because I just felt we needed massive change. One of the it's really weird, right? Because we had this incredible opportunity to be closer to the club than not would be normal, right? And that was awesome. And I've got to maintain that Justin Pascoe with that was absolutely outstanding. The way he opened the Tigers' doors for us and involved us and cooperated with us, especially with the Ambush, the members working group, and it was a real privilege. But it was also really sad because we got to see that things weren't working well. They weren't operating smoothly, and it was just more and more apparent that right across the organisation, from what we saw on the football field to what happened in the back office, it just wasn't happening. And it just became apparent to me that this club needed massive change. And the fact that we're now on our way to achieving that as a club is just fantastic. And it's sad for those that have had to move on, but for the club and the clubs down the track, it's a wonderful thing.
Gary, did you have any, like Steve, any sort of change in your feelings or emotions the last 5 or 6 days, given that like Steve, you did work with some of those guys for a couple of years and no potential consequences of what this review would come about?
Well, I have to agree with Steve. My biggest feeling now is relief. It's relief and hope that we can get the club that we deserve, the club that this fan base deserves to have. It's been a fractured fan base for the last couple of years at least, supporting a team that is a decade out of the top half of the competition. It is a decade out of the finals. And for me, it's just that opportunity to bring that fan base back together, to reset our club, because I really think it's a complete reset of our club, and move the club forward and get everyone finally going in the same direction. So it's the relief and hope that brings that, and that's what that change does for us. It gives us the opportunity to reset our club and start building, and it cuts off a lot of the scar tissue that was there from the previous 10 years with the fan base. I think it gives the club an opportunity to rekindle those relationships with the fan base that has been lost over the last 2 to 3 years, especially. And for me, that's the big part. We have a big, loyal fan base of this club that was severely broken by what's gone on over the last couple of years. And hopefully now we just have a big, loyal fan base that can push along with the club in the right direction. And hopefully, quite soon, or as Steve would like to put it, next year we get to see us playing finals football.
It's interesting, Declan. It's sort of, I don't have too many close mates that are hardcore Tigers fans, but I got 4 or 5, and straight away 3 of them said to me on the Tuesday, I'm renewing my membership. So if that's like everyone, like I've always cast a little bit of doubt, even though membership numbers on the surface look pretty strong for a club that's got 2 wooden spoons and 12 years without finals, hovering around that 20,000 mark. But we know there's split packages and all the like. But I get the feeling that you could see almost the broken fans in the next few months, the guys who have been disillusioned, the guys and girls, and that membership number could actually skyrocket a little bit.
Yeah, I think all these membership stats, it just shows you that a change did well and truly need to happen, because people were just becoming so disenfranchised that they were honestly considering like not signing up again. And yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. And imagine if we get off to I don't know, like a 5-win winning streak out of 6 or 7. Like imagine what that'll do with memberships as well, because then you're going to get the people who are fans who wouldn't have been memberships, wouldn't have had a membership before. So yeah, the sky's the limit, and I think like hopefully this is the start of some like a new kind of dawn for the club.
Especially if in the next few days or next week or so, we get a big name signing announced. I think that's going to really put a bit of wind behind the sails of the club and the new coaching staff and the new direction. So the news that's potentially coming over the next week, maybe 2 weeks, could be huge for the club and really add to what we had last week as well.
And Holman Barnes have done a really smart thing here, I reckon, because what they've done is they've actually said, you know what, the voice of the fan is important. Now, we've got to know our place as fans. We are not privy to closed-door discussions. We're not privy to all the information. All the time, our opinions are formed based on speculation, really. And we were lucky in a way with the Ambush, the members working group, that we got a little bit more than normal. But most of the time, we're just speculating. And so we've got to understand that. And we don't know it all. And we don't know what's going on a lot of the time. But if you want to build advocacy in your organisation, you want the people that follow you to feel listened to. And at the moment, the fan base feels listened to. And that's a wonderful thing. And, if possible, it would be awesome that is maintained into the future, that somehow, in some shape or form, in a small way, the club is connected to the fan base. You can do that these days through social media. You can do it. You just need a conduit. And I think if the club really wants to go, build memberships, a great way to do it would be to turn your fans and members into advocates by listening to them and have them know that they are listened to.
And the big point, probably the last point that I want to make about this is, I again want to give credit to the Holman Barnes group. Some of those guys on the Holman Barnes group made really tough decisions. They lost positions on a board that I'm sure they really enjoyed having. I'm sure all those guys who are on both boards really enjoyed their time as West Tigers board members. I need to give those guys credit for making the decision and pushing this through to actually change the structure of our club, to change the governance of our club, and to do something that most people thought they'd never, ever do. And as a lot of people were saying, they needed to fall on their sword. Well, some of those guys last week did that, and no matter what has happened in the past, they've made the right decision now, and they deserve credit for that. And they probably haven't got enough credit for that decision that they made last week. So I want to make sure that the Holman Barnes group does get the credit it deserves for the decisions that those board members made last week to right the ship.
Yep, here, there. So once again, just a big thank you to, I think it was just over 2,000 fans that signed that petition. I was probably a bit like most others out there, probably a little bit skeptical, thinking how far could a petition go. But you guys, particularly, Gary and Steve and Joel, you guys drove it. And I think the way, without wanting to beat your drum too much, Gary, smiling there in the background, but I think the way you guys went about it in a really measured way, without it trying to make it personal, without trying to make it abusive, actually made it so effective, Declan. If that's working a little bit with the Holman Barnes guys, it wasn't like it was we were trying to get them out and it was a witch hunt for anyone. It came across quite constructively.
Yeah, well, I think the people that we spoke to even said that verbally, that the reason why they were so receptive to the review was because it was done in a very cordial and civil manner. So yeah, I think it's a great credit to everyone as to it shows that grassroots efforts can really work if they're done in the correct way.
And that method of doing it, I know was really important to me, but I know it was really important to Steve and Joel and all of us involved in it. My strong belief is that if you do things professionally and calmly, and even when you are talking about hard topics and at times being critical of people and critical of organisations, if you do it in a calm and professional manner, it'll be taken in that manner. And throughout our interactions with the Holman Barnes group, with the review team, I think that's how our efforts have been returned from us. I thought we were treated very professionally by both the Holman Barnes group and the review team. And to me, that's just proof that that's how you go about these situations. You don't need to rant and rave and name call. And I like, believe me, those people that were doing that, I'm not having a go at you, because I felt like doing that as well. But I think to get real change, you have to be professional, you have to be calm, and you have to engage and have those conversations. And I think that's why this worked on this occasion. So I was just really pleased that we were able to do it in that manner, and that most of our fan base took it in that manner as well. The people we had come on the pod and talk about their engagement with the club did so in a calm and professional way. The majority of comments on the petition were calm and professional. Critical, but calm and professional. And I think that was really important throughout this process.
We will do this podcast, boys, in two parts, because we've spoken probably for 15 minutes there on what happened on Tuesday and your feelings and emotions around it, and the happiness of the supporter base. But there's been a lot happened since, Steve. Wednesday was a 22-minute press conference with Shane Richardson. Saturday, we saw the news drop around Jerome Luai. It looks very likely he's going to be a West Tiger for 2025 and beyond. And a little bit of more, I guess, not signing news, but potentially a player leaving the club in 2025 in Junior Tupou. So we're going to cover all that in a couple of parts. Let's start with Shane Richardson, Steve. Very bullish, nothing unexpected if you followed sort of his career. He fronted the press and he was taking no prisoners. He says, I've never been in a club yet that wasn't on the bottom of the ladder, that being South, Cronulla, Penrith and Hull. It's not what I say, it's what I do. What were your initial impressions of Richo?
And that was the best 22 minutes of West Tigers footage I've seen in a very long time. That was the best press conference to start a guy's time at the club. It was so professional. He was totally in control. It was like, there's a new sheriff in town, boys, look out. And he just looked down at the press and he just said, ask me whatever you want. That's how he opened up. He said, look, I've just started this, ask me whatever you want. And they just fired questions at him, and he was in charge. And he just left me with the feeling that we are in experienced, capable hands, and the guy's going to make decisions. And he said this himself. He won't get them all right. He'll make mistakes. Everyone does. But he's not going to die wondering. We've got someone in charge of the organisation now that knows what they're doing and is going to drive standards forward. It's going to be a good journey, I think.
He's already shown how decisive he is in his decisions. Within, what was it, a day, we'd pulled out of the race for Noah Blake. He had confirmed, and by reports I've read today, actually upped our offer to Jerome Luai. So these are decisions that he's gone in before he's even officially started in the role, and very decisive about the direction of the club. I don't think we're going to see that wishy-washy sort of direction that we've had in the past. I think for where we are as a club, where we're coming from, it's the perfect sort of appointment. The fact his experience in, as you were saying, Eddie, from his experience in building clubs from down near the bottom to premiership threats and premiership winners is probably second to none in the game. And that's what really excites me. You have a look what he did at Penrith and getting Penrith to the 2003 grand final and premiership. And then he turned around and started at South and he did the same again. That just excites me for where we are. I don't think you'd get a better rebuilding CEO than Richo. And hopefully, it's not just a 12-month appointment. Hopefully he's here for a number of years.
Well, there were two things out of that press conference that I thought were outstanding. And one was a message of support. He said it's his job to put everything around the football team and football department that they need to be successful. So if they need it, I'm going to do it. And he also went on to say, we won't be recruiting anyone that the coach doesn't want. You know, like he just came out, bang, straight out. Like that. So there was that message of support. But the other thing was this message of expectation. When he was asked, can the Tigers make the 8? You know, he didn't pussyfoot around. He didn't say, oh, well, we'll just take it week for week. There was none of that garbage.
He didn't say 9th to 12th, Steve?
He certainly did not say 9 to 12th because he's a professional. What he did say was it's up to Benji and the team. And I just love that because he was just, in a way, saying to his football team and football coaching department, it's up to you guys. You pay professionals. Let's see it happen. And I just thought that was a fantastic message to put out there.
Declan, Steve was banging that drum about attention to detail, and I noticed something else that he said was he doesn't know how long it's going to take, but we don't put any restrictions on what we can achieve. And obviously that was the case at what they did achieve at Penrith, but I just got the impression he's obviously a man he's got a big ego. I think it's fair to say that. He wasn't afraid to toot his own horn, but he's got the runs on the board. And I just came out of that 22-minute press conference sort of breathing a sigh of relief, saying we've got the head honcho here and he's not going to suffer, any fools or any Balmain West Division or that sort of stuff going on in the background. He's just not going to sign up for something if that's going on.
Yeah, I think we've all been banging on for someone who's, like, with all due respect to people in the past, like someone with a real footy background is like administration in rugby league. And, I like Gary's laughing, but, Pascoe, he didn't really have that. And I think that's fair to say. Like, yes, he was at Penrith, but Phil Gould was the head honcho there. But someone like Richardson, like he's got like vast experience, honestly. And the thing I really liked about his press conference was, as Steve alluded to, he put out a lot of potential fires. He was speaking to Benji Marshall. I think he was speaking to Jerome Luai, the fans. Like, he was speaking to a lot of people in the media, kind of like putting everyone at ease. And I think he did a great job of building confidence with everyone. But what I loved was he said, it's not about what you say you're going to do. It's about what you actually do. And I think that's been the problem with the higher-ups of the Tigers. They've been more focused on telling everyone what they're going to do and what they're doing rather than actually doing it. And I think he's just someone that, like, he's exactly what we need, someone who can just take the club on his back and put us in the right direction.
Yeah, and just on your ego comment, Eddie, like, I reckon you can cop ego when you've earned it. You know what I mean? Like, if Shane Warne gets up, well, obviously not anymore, but if Shane Warne got up there and would tell you how to play, can't catch, can't throw, well, mate, you know what? Shane Warne, you've earned the right to make those comments. And I think Richardson has earned that right to have a bit of an ego. The time that you can't cop ego is when it's coming from someone that has done nothing, right? And he's just starting their journey. That's when you want to see humility and learning and that sort of thing. Coming from a guy who's pretty much done it all in footy admin, let the ego go. Good luck to him.
Two other things, Gary, that stood out for me was one, his track record that he spoke of local juniors, and that tied into some very strong comments, I thought, about the future of the club being potentially in the Southwest. Obviously, we've just decided, on a short, perhaps medium term, to play 5 games at Leichhardt and 5 games at Campbelltown. But he made sort of a throwaway comment, but it wasn't lost on me. I said, I don't mind I think he said a Wretches and a hot dog at Leichhardt, but the future is in the Southwest. So do you expect some significant inroads in the next year or two in terms of maybe a long-term move out there or a potential stadium upgrade? There is, I think, a $41 million potential centre of excellence being put in that one of the ends there at Campbelltown Stadium. So that raised my eyebrows, those comments.
Yeah, so at the moment they have a partnership with a number of groups out at Campbelltown, including the university, and I think the soccer team that plays out there is involved as well, for a youth academy out there, which I think is a great thing. But if we are going to make a permanent move out there, and it's not something that I'm against, that stadium does need to be rebuilt. We do need a better stadium there. We need something that's got a much better capacity than, I think it's around that 18 to 20,000. I think if we're going to be playing the majority of our games out there, we need something around that 25,000. And if we can get a stadium out there that seats 25,000 people comfortably and has all the modern facilities, then I'm happy to play one, maybe two games at Leichhardt a year and the rest out there. I think that would be a good move forward. So I can see us making a move. But the other thing that needs to happen out there is that re-engagement with the Macarthur area. We're not getting the crowds out there at the moment. We can't be at the point where we're struggling to get 10,000 people to a game out at Campbelltown. So the best fix for that is starting to win football games. But there needs to be a strong effort. And if we're looking at making it a more of a permanent move, there needs to be a really strong strategic direction and a plan to re-engage that Macarthur area, because at the moment, the engagement's not good enough to support us making that move.
And speaking of engagement, I know we're going to talk about them probably next, but could you imagine just how helpful it would be to sign someone like Jerome Luai and get people to the games in that Western Sydney audience, because he's so popular at Penrith. He puts bums on seats. He's a personality. I can only imagine in the Campbelltown area, a lot of people would come to watch just him play. So I think that's probably another reason why he'd just be such a game changer, because it'd be a great way to kind of break even more into that market.
You have a look, and I know it's not quite the same, but you have a look at how Benji Marshall engaged the youth when he came through. And if we can get a percentage of that sort of engagement from Jerome Luai, I think that would be massive for engagement across all our regions. But yeah, it would be huge for Campbelltown because it is a young area. It has similarities with where he is from as well. So I think it could be quite a strong move for that engagement. I agree with you, Declan.
Obviously, Steve, he's got a lot on his plate this 6 months, and I'm sure I speak for everyone to say I hope it's a lot longer than 6 months. So NRL, please don't let these Brisbane Tigers into the competition. Just put the PNG team in now. I'm all for the PNG team now because Richo can stay with us for the long term. But he mentioned, I think he was asked about general manager of football. Obviously, his first point of call will be putting together this new board, but he's probably one of the few crossover people that can do both on an interim basis, CEO and general manager of football. But do you have any thoughts on how you'd like to see the structure lie out? He says he's all about structure and putting positions with a title, but he didn't want to come in with any preconceived ideas. Do we need a general manager of football? Could he do both roles, or are you just going to leave it up to him and whatever he says goes?
No, I think what you just said there in the middle of your intro, Eddie, when you said he needs to come in and have a look at the organisation as it is at the moment, that's probably the most important thing he'll do in the short term, is just look and have a look at all the structures that are in place. My personal opinion, I like the idea of a head of football, especially with Benji Marshall being so inexperienced. I know they've put a decent coaching team around him, which I think is really positive, but I think an experienced operator with a football background as head of football would be a good thing. Could Richo do both? I don't know the answer to that. I probably don't like the idea of that. I think let him be a good CEO and stick to that is my initial thinking. But I will absolutely back him to have a look at the organisation and then make decisions based on what he sees. That's what I think he'll do. And if history it repeats itself, he'll make the right calls.
Speaking about that general manager role, that head of football role, we currently have Matthew Betsy acting in that role. Now, if it was a situation where Shane Richardson was staying on long term, I'm talking 3-4 years, as long as possible, then I probably wouldn't have too much of a concern. And I know we've got an inexperienced coach, but I probably wouldn't have too much of a concern with him mentoring someone like Matthew Betsy for that role. But if we are looking at a shorter term sort of option, then I think it's really crucial that we get someone experienced into that role. So I think a lot of that depends on how long Shane Richardson's planning on being in that CEO office.
Yeah, I think I saw in the Sydney Morning Herald, there's a theory that he'll be the CEO and the head of football for the interim period, but then he'll transition to the head of football and then they'll hire a CEO someone who's maybe more like familiar. Obviously, he can do both, as Paul said, but someone who specializes in the kind of bookkeeping stuff. So I could definitely see that happening, where like he'll become the head of football, which I think can be a really good thing, because he's just got such experience running a footy department.
In my opinion, if we have him at the club, I'm happy for him to be in that CEO role. If he needs someone to help on the admin side of stuff, which I don't think he overly does, he's done this role at many clubs and many clubs in a similar position, then hire someone to work under him and work with him in that role. I think would be wasting his experience a little bit just to put him back into a head of football role, because I think his experience is across a club. It's not just in that football department role, and not just across a club. Like, he worked for a long time at the NRL in quite high profile jobs as well. So I want him as high as possible in our club.
So just on both those points that you guys made, where does Robbie Farah fit into that? Because if we are talking about maybe a mentoring opportunity and a transition, and for someone to transition into one of those roles, there's been the drums are beating around Robbie Farah being involved at that administrative level, whether it's CEO type role or head of football type role. Like, is he being groomed to be part of that structure?
I think he needs a bit longer.
Yeah, I don't think I could be wrong, Steve, but I think that would be a polarizing move. Not so much that he wouldn't be up to it, but just the fact that he'd have the training wheels on the first few years. But there's no doubt he didn't. It was insinuated a couple of years ago that he may not be Benji Marshall's assistant, and perhaps his long-term future, if he was going to stay involved with the Tigers, was upstairs. Declan?
Yeah, how old is Shane Richardson? Because there was some comments in the Daily Telegraph that he was moving into kind of semi-retirement. So I just couldn't. I did Google it, but I couldn't really find an answer. So I feel like he doesn't look like he looks like he's still got a little bit of time left. So hopefully, he can stick around for a while, because I think based off the first press conference, he's very impressive in the way he speaks.
I think those guys. I mean, I don't think he was in semi-retirement. I think he's been working behind the scenes with this Brisbane Tigers movement, which was the club that he played and coached at. I believe he was an ex-front rower and an ex-coach. So I just think guys like that, they're addicted to success. It's like Wayne Bennett. He'll probably drop dead on the job. He's not going to retire all of a sudden. So, Gary?
Yeah, Steve won't like me saying it, but Andrew Voss said last week people like Shane Richardson should be involved in the game until they pretty much are no longer with us.
Steve, just before I move on from Richo, I wanted to ask Joel this, but I can't because he's not on. But Joel went on ad nauseum about Pascoe's hair and Pascoe's appearance. Richo turned up like he'd just been living in a cave for 4 years. But I guess it doesn't matter because he's got the runs on the board, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I've got to say, I always felt sorry for the sort of garbage that was thrown out there about Justin Pascoe. Like judge him on the job he did in the office, right? Don't judge him on like his haircut and the fact they put a barber shop in the Centre of Excellence and all this stuff. However, I will just say one thing. There were times where he could have presented himself more professionally, and because he didn't have the runs on the board, that went against him because people looked for anything to have a go at him. But I did feel sorry for him in that regard.
Steve, you hypocrite. What was the first thing you said to me when we jumped online tonight?
Can't remember that long ago, Gary.
No, I do. I said, "Oh, you're here again."
That wasn't it.
Or do you mean after that?
Declan, he said, just in regards to David Norfoluma, he said he would be firm, fair and polite. I liked those 3 words, but perhaps ominous for someone like Noffa.
I mean, yeah, I think he made it very clear that he hadn't really spoken to anyone at the club about like really anything that was going on internally. So I at that point in time, I just don't think he really knew. But yeah, you would imagine that he wouldn't really mix his words once he gets a good grasp of the situation. But it's amazing how we're going to lose. Like we're going to lose someone like Daniel Junior Tupou. Then Norfoluma is still here. It just defies belief.
One more thing on Richo. I've lost my train of thought, boys. Let's talk about Lee just for a minute. And I don't want to kick a guy when he's down because obviously a tough week for him. But I mean, Pascoe, I thought Steve went with a little bit of dignity and class. Didn't have anything to say on the way out. Lee had plenty to say on his radio show on Wednesday morning and in the papers to Chalmers and Reid, who he's good mates with, as we know from a lot of the quotes they've got from him over the years. But I just thought, Steve, the more he spoke, the more it said why we needed a change.
Well, Lee's behaviour this week just cemented anyone's thinking about why we did need the change. He has been less than humble, that's for sure. He just can't read the room. He just cannot read the room. The guy has been ousted because of systemic failure over a club that he was, had oversight over. He failed in what he was trying to achieve. He just needed to walk away quietly, and he couldn't do it. And he's made no friends at all in the last week.
I thought disappointing comments, Gary. I know he's hurting, and he has a right to be hurting. He's put a lot of money and time into the club, but when he starts dragging player managers into it and the fact that this is going to put pressure on Benji, to me it just makes it sound like it's all about him. I could be wrong there, and that just could be the perception, but I don't think a lot of Tigers fans looking at those quotes felt a lot of sympathy the way he went about it.
Look, the telling quotes for me aren't actually the ones from last week. It's a quote where he said that he serves at the pleasure of the board. Well, then why are you throwing the toys out of the cot when the board says we no longer want you in that role? So he spoke a big game about wanting to do the best for the club. Well, if he served at the pleasure of the board, then when he was told he was no longer required for that role, then there shouldn't have been I'll use the word hissy fit that he has shown the last couple of days. I thought that was really poor form and showed just how hollow those quotes were from the past about, serving.
Yeah, and he also demonstrated a total lack of respect for the fans of the club. In his comments that this was just a knee-jerk reaction to a bunch of hysterical, and upset fans. Now, he did make the point, I'll give him this, he did make the point that the fans had the right to feel upset. He did say that. But the way he put that whole little sentence together was, like we should be dismissing what the fans say, and that was his attitude. I think a lot of the time that he felt he was above the majority of us, and therefore can't handle when he was brought back down to the pack.
I mean, I did think it was funny with that comment that even his straw man argument was actually made us, the fans, seem more reasonable in the fact that we wanted them gone, because no team should lose by 70 points to anyone. Like, I do think that's probably like sufficient reason to look at things, because if you lose to a team by 70 points and something is clearly wrong. So I just found that a little bit funny that even when he was trying to show that the fans were overreacting, he kind of proved our point, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and Benji might have a good relationship with Justin Pascoe, but I just found it ironic when he was talking about Benji needs an experienced CEO, but yet he had nothing to mention about Shane Richardson, who's been in the game over 20, 25 years, Gary, and doing it since the 90s with Cronulla and Hull. But like overall, is he going to cause some trouble the next year? He looks like he's staying on board as a sponsor. He's either got to suck that up or has sucked that up. He said he does obviously bleed black, white, and gold. He is a supporter of the club, but it's a sort of a delicate dynamic. Perhaps the next 12 months, do you see potential bit of scuttlebutt going on or not?
Well, to be honest, I think the more time that's removed from him being in that role, the less relevance what he has to say is going to carry. He may be someone who, for a little while, when things are going on at the club, that the media kind of has on speed dial to get a little bit of a quote from. I think that's potentially the issue. I think he should try and avoid that as much as he can. But I think as time goes by, his comments will have less and less relevance moving forward.
And I just think it's a little bit disappointing. And I know, Gary, you made mention before about, I'm not, I don't think Andrew Voss is the greatest commentator ever. That's just my personal opinion. But I do think, when you get a guy on SEN in the morning and they got this huge story, then all they did at SEN there was give him space to whinge. They didn't. They didn't really interrogate him in any way, shape, or form. And you would think a story as big as what happened, a little bit of investigative journalism and interrogation was called for at that time, not just sit back and let the bloke who sponsors the radio station have his say. I thought that was pretty weak, actually.
Well, yeah, I suppose that you just answered your own question, Steve. That's what happens when you sponsor the whole program, and they're not really going to take him to task, are they? Like, NRO 360 would. So, yeah, it is disappointing because at the end of the day, like, I feel like because he wore two hats, and the fact that he was like trying to promote Bryden's Lawyers was a big reason as to why he was so vocal on that SEN, and I think that was a real detriment to the club at the end. So, yeah, I'm glad that we've sorted that issue out.
I will give him credit. He's very good at parlaying his sponsorship deals into influence in places. He got the chairmanship at the West Tigers, and his sponsorship gets him a free guest spot on SEN once a week. So he makes his money work for him.
Well, it's not free, that's for sure. I'm sure he pays a lot of money for that guest spot.
Jarome Luai, boys, I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so to come up with a word for a potential 5-year deal starting in 2025. But I guess the story broke Saturday morning. It was Michael Chalmers on his Twitter account that said, rumoured that he signed for 5 years, $6 million. There was obviously a little bit of, not backtracking, but walking it back. Luai came out on Instagram and said, no deal yet, guys, I'll let you know. But since then, there was another article tonight saying he didn't attend Penrith training on Monday. He left Penrith training an hour earlier on the Saturday. And there is a little bit of rumour now that perhaps he could be available for 2024, given what could be a deteriorating relationship between Luai and the Panthers. Not that we care about that. Gary, do you have one word to sum up the fact that if it does happen, which I know Declan's still nervous about, what Jarome Luai signing for 5 years would mean?
Supercharge. I think it really supercharges the rebuild of this club. At the moment, we've got some young halves with potential, and we're waiting to see if that potential kind of develops. I think if you put a guy like Jarome Luai in there, it speeds up that development of the club quite quickly. So, and I'm very confident that this is done. Like, I'm very confident that we're going to see Jarome Luai playing for the West Tigers in 2025.
Steve, your word?
Yeah, I'm going to say cautiously optimistic. I'm not as gung-ho about him as some of you other guys are, and I am yet to be convinced that he's the player worth the dollars that are being thrown about for him. But there's a few clubs that are willing to pay those dollars by the looks of things, so maybe I'm going to have to, eat humble pie and admit that I'm wrong. I hope I do, because I hope he kills it. But I'm just not sure he's going to be the leader on the football field that we're hoping he will be. But I'll be more than happy to say I was wrong once he starts with us.
And it wouldn't be the first time you had to say that, Steve.
Be close.
Declan, putting aside your nerves about whether this could be a last-minute disaster and the Dogs come out on Saturday and announce they've signed him, what's your word for signing Jarome?
I'm going to do Steve. I'm going to use 2 words. I'm going to go circuit breaker. I think that if we sign him, this will be the first indication for a very long time that the Tigers as a club for serious footballers who are in the business of winning. Because you can say one thing about Jarome, he's won a lot at his time at Penrith, and I think that someone like that to come to a club like us, I think it sends a message to other players in the competition that the Tigers are turning around and they mean business.
Yeah, I just went with bold because I think it's bold from us, the amount of money, the years, And it's bold, the fact that he's going to be asked to be the main man. He has no doubt about that. He's not coming here to play 5'8". He's coming here to run the team. And he's a bold personality. He's brash. People don't like Jerome Luai. And I've grown to like him, Gary. Obviously, it's easy for me to say that now because he signed for us for 5 years. But, he's a troll. He likes winding people up. He likes winding the fans up on social media after Origin. He reminds me a bit, just not the player, obviously, different positions, but of like guys like Jared McCracken and guys, just someone who can come in and make an influence on a group. And part of that is a bit of arrogance. And I think he's got that. And I think that, as much as his playing ability, could have a difference at this club.
Yeah, he's someone who, personality-wise, has rubbed me the wrong way pretty much his entire career. But it is about that arrogance and that ego, and that's something that does rub me kind of the wrong way, even though Steve would probably say I'm fairly arrogant and ego-driven myself. But it does kind of rub me the wrong way. But I think it's something our club needs. I think it's going to be the making of his move. Because I know the money's big, and I know that he's coming for the money. But I also really believe that with a guy like Jerome, with that arrogance and that ego that he has, there's a desire for him to finish his career not being known as a sidekick to Nathan Cleary, not being the backup, not being the bit player. And that drive mixed with the skill that he has, and if he has things to work on to become that dominant player, that leader that Steve's worried about that he's not on the field, then that ego and that arrogance may be enough to make him develop those aspects of his game so he can step out of that shadow he's in. Because right now, he's a 3-time premiership winning half who people are saying only got those premiership rings because of the players around him. And Nathan Cleary casts a very big shadow, and I think there's a real desire there to step out of that shadow.
Yeah, I just disagree with Steve. I think he is undoubtedly a leader. I mean, if you just look at everything he's done. I mean, Isaiah Yeo came out publicly and said that he really does set the standards at training. Yes, he's a little bit brass and he's got a bit of a media persona that people don't really like. But if you look at it, he's actually a very selfless player because he's been willing to take less in terms of accolades and glory at Penrith, because at Penrith he's kind of the third or fourth string option. I mean, you've got Cleary, Yeo, Edwards, kind of all get the ball more than him. I think he averages the least amount of touches in the NRL for a 5'8". So he takes less for the team to succeed, which I think is a sign of a selfless leader. And not to mention that he also played a grand final with a busted shoulder. I mean, there's no way that he was right to play. Everyone thought he was going to miss that game, but he took the field to be there, so he could support the team. And I just think that stuff like that kind of shows that he is a leader, on the field. And the word coming out of Penrith is that everyone just loves him, from the players to the admin to the coaching staff, because he brings that energy. And if you look at every single time that Nathan Cleary puts up a bomb, and the defense's 20, you'll see the first person chasing that bomb is often Jerome Luai. And I think that just shows you that he's that kind of effort player. And that's a great sign of leadership for me.
And the thing he really doesn't get the credit for that he deserves is he got a second-tier nation to a World Cup final. That effort to lead Samoa to the World Cup final last year against Australia, that's a huge, huge effort. Everyone was rating Tonga and the other second-tier nations well ahead of Samoa, but Samoa was the one that came through. They beat England in the semi-final. They were the ones that made it all the way through to the final. That's a huge effort, and people just write that off because it's just international football. But that's a massive effort, and that's that leadership that we're desperately looking for. And he was the dominant half in that side, and that's what I'm hoping transitions to the player we're going to have at the West Tigers in 2025.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to come back at you and try to argue the point, because you both make really good points there. I think it's very convincing, and I hope you're right. I hope you're 100% right, and everything you said is true. Yeah, and this is not really related to my previous comment about being cautiously optimistic, but with all of what you guys just said, which makes sense, right? Why did Ivan Cleary say what he said a few weeks ago and was seemingly pretty happy to get rid of him.
I got a little bit of background. Apparently, that was almost like a hot mic thing. That was meant to be a Penrith sponsorship thing. That was not meant to be recorded, and that was caught on a hot mic. So I don't think he would have said that publicly. But I don't know why he said that. Obviously, he believes that. Perhaps. Obviously, he's got his son there, who's the main guy. But Declan.
I mean, yeah, like Nathan Cleary is without a doubt, deserving of that role. Like he is the main guy at Penrith, and like he is the best player in the competition. So you're not really gonna, like elevate Jerome Luai like that. And like, why would you change his role when you've won 3 comps in a row? Like, there's no need to change it because you've found the recipe for success. You've found such a great balance. And I do genuinely think that Penrith have tried to keep him, but they have offered him a 3-year deal. It's not like someone like Stephen Crichton where they did try to keep him, but it wasn't like really serious. And like someone like Matt Barron or like even someone like Api Coruscant, who he said on podcasts that Penrith kind of just told him straight from the start that they couldn't really afford him. So that's why it was kind of easy for him to leave. But I do think this is a little bit different in the fact that like they did legitimately try and keep Luai. And now we can see in the media that they're not happy that he's leaving with all the leaks that what I assume they're leaking to the media in terms of like filming training and kind of trying to like blindside him with like him telling his teammates that he's going somewhere else, allegedly. So yeah, I do think this is a little bit different. They did want to keep him and they're a little bit filthy at the moment.
Yeah, but the point that was made was not about changing his role at Penrith. Like Ivan Cleary didn't come out and say, well, maybe he should play this role. It wasn't about that. Ivan Cleary's comment was, I don't know, like, I'm paraphrasing, but I don't know if he's got the leadership in him at another club. That was the comment. It wasn't about what he has or hasn't done at Penrith. And I just found that a really weird comment. That's all.
Yeah, like obviously, Ivan Cleary, he's got like great vision of him. He sees him at training every day, so you can't really discount his opinion on that. But if you look at someone like Cameron Ciraldo, like who's at the Bulldogs now, and like he also coached Jerome Luai when he was playing under 20s as well, and that his recent comment saying that Jerome Luai can like do pretty much anything he wants, and the Bulldogs are like chasing him, which is what we're led to believe. I think that also says a lot about the fact that other people who know Jerome Luai or have known him for quite a while also think that he can be a main playmaker. So yeah, I think it's just interesting, but I think like just different perspectives on it. But yeah, I'm not sure if like Ivan was trying to downplay Luai's value maybe, and that's why he said it like in front of the sponsors. But yeah, it's hard to tell.
Yeah. For me, I think he was trying to downplay the market for him. I think the line was something like he hasn't proven that he can be that dominant playmaker in the NRL. I think that's what the line was from memory. I'm paraphrasing as well, Steve, so I may be wrong. And I think it was an attempt to kind of take a little bit of the heat out of the market. I don't think it worked. I think it backfired terribly. But I think that was his intention, was to downplay. And possibly, we've all heard about Penrith planting stories when they know they're going to lose a player. Maybe they were already fairly aware they had an uphill battle of keeping him. So it was about building that narrative of that we'll be fine without him.
Yes, boys, it's like Josh Reynolds. People will maybe compare it to him, but I thought he had big doubts over his football when he came over here. He obviously signed at the time I think it was $800,000 for 4 years, which is probably the equivalent of 1.2 for 5 years these days. But I just think, Steve, it's up to as much as our club as it is on Jerome, because we've seen players come over here just fail and fail and fail. Can we help him? Because it's going to be a bit of a culture shock to him. And that's not saying, everything's hunky-dory now because we got a new board and with Shane Richardson there. We do still have a rookie coach. We've got a side that is beaten down, some of them, from years of losing. So that's going to be as much as an issue for me, or why I'm probably a little bit cautious about it, is can he just step up in an environment like our club and flourish where others in the past have just floundered?
Yeah, I think I said this on the last pod I was on, where I said, at the moment we've got opportunity, and that's all it is. opportunity plus a few bucks buys you coffee. That's all, right? Like we're going to do something with this opportunity now. And you're right, Eddie. We've had years and years and years of players coming to this club and not performing. And too often we blame the player. And when I say we, that's a collective we, right through from fans, right through the organisation. The player has got the wrong attitude, or the player's busted, or whatever it may be, right? And we never actually say, well, you know what? Maybe that player did come with the right intent and just couldn't handle the dysfunctionality that has been West Tigers. You know, that's a difficult thing to say and have a conversation about. So now there's the opportunity to get rid of that dysfunctionality and to be a professionally run and professionally rolled out organisation, so that blokes like Jerome Louis can thrive. And that's what Shane Richardson said. It's his job to put everything around this football team and department so they can be the best they can be. And that would be a lovely change, because it hasn't been what's happened in the past. It'd be great to see a guy like Luai come to the club and become a better footballer because he's at West Tigers.
So you have guys with lots of different personalities in a football team. You have guys who are just bad for culture at your club. I think we've got a couple of examples of those at the moment. You have guys who will go to a club and they'll fit into whatever culture is at that club. So you go to the Storm and they'll fit in with that really hard working culture that they have. Or they'll come to a side like the Tigers has been in the past, that the culture may not have been as strong, and they'll fit into that culture, and the game will go backwards because they've gone into a culture that doesn't suit them. You have guys who, no matter what culture they go into, they'll always put their best foot forward, and they'll strive and do their best. They'll work hard, and they'll be great for your club. But then you have guys that you bring into your club and they drive your culture. They are the ones who are setting the standards at your club. They are the ones who are bringing others along with them. And some of the talk coming not so much from people like Ivan Cleary, but from some of the other Penrith players in the last couple of weeks. To me, it seems like they're talking about Jerome Luai as that guy that goes into your club and he drives that culture in your club.
And yeah, I get what you're saying, but like, didn't we say the same about guys like James Tarmo and even Moses Mbai and even Appy? Appy was great last year, but the team ran last.
Yep. So maybe Appy's not that person that changes the culture in your club. Maybe he's the person that comes in and he's always doing that hard work. He's always getting the best out of himself, but he's not able to transfer that to others. And yes, we can talk about what the CEO can do to improve culture. We can talk about what the coach can do, and the coach has quite a big role in it. But they can't do it by themselves. They can't do it when you got guys who aren't showing up at training because they've been asked to train too hard. That's when those guys are leaders in your club and long-term members of your club, then you need to get other people in to lead that culture change, because it can't be just the coach. There's got to be player buy-in. And maybe Appy is a guy that can change the culture, but maybe one person isn't enough. Maybe we need some more people who set those kind of standards and drive that culture. I don't think we're taking a backward step with this guy. To me, everything I see and hear about him and written about him and the arrogance that he displays, and you see him, I've seen him chew players out on the field for mistakes they made. He seems to be a guy that sets standards for other players, and I don't think anyone here can argue that we have enough of those sort of players in our squad at the moment. So, to me, that's my hope, is that he can be the guy that contributes to that change at our club, because it's been spoken about for a long time. Benji Marshall, as a player, used to get it all the time. Robbie Farah used to get it, is that the Tigers had a soft underbelly. Well, we're at a position now where we're resetting our club. So many new coach coming into our club, new board coming into our club, new CEO coming into the club. This is a fresh start. This is a fresh chance to get rid of that negative kind of connotation that we're the easy beats and that we're the place you go to play just to pick up a paycheck. Or that we're spoken about many times, all the players we've had over the past who are just happy being NRL players and don't strive to be better. We have an opportunity to fix that now, and hopefully Jerome Luai is a big part of that.
I just don't think that I just don't think one person can just come into a footy club after 10 years of failure and just turn it around by themselves. I actually thought that Appy, like on the field, was a great leader last year. Like just his effort areas, his leadership, you could tell that everyone listened to him. Like he played really well every single week, and most times, not a lot of people came with him. And we don't know, we're not there at training. We don't see like who sets the standards at training, but like the guys like Jerome Luai, guys like Appy Coruscant, they know what winning looks like. And I just think at the moment, not a lot of guys at the Tigers do know what winning looks like. So the more people you can get in that had that success, the more chance that it's going to like rub off on the other people and the younger players especially.
So Justin Olam as well then, because he's had quite a successful kind of career. Is he someone you'd be adding as well, Declan?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it. He seems a little bit more quiet to me. He doesn't really seem like a verbal leader.
It's just got to be a collective. Like we could go on about, yes, he's been a winner, but I mean, Clemmer was a winner. Papali'i was a winner. Bateman was a winner at Canberra. They made grand finals, but they're not a winner at our club. So it's got to be a collective effort, group on the field, and the guys obviously in the front office getting better squad. Because our squad at the moment, I think, there is a little bit of quality there, but I'd still say it's probably, if you take your Tigers hat off, it's probably a bottom four squad heading into 2024. But Steve, could he come here in 2024? Where would he play? Would he play next to Caesar? I mean, I'd love him for this year because you want to make the 8 next year. And I would have to say, if he did join in December, my expectations would raise towards that level.
Oh, yeah. Look, one of the things I find really frustrating NRL at the moment is this 12-month. Like if we have in fact signed this bloke, and I think we have, and then we've got to wait 12 months before he gets here. Right? I can't stand that. I really, I want him here. I want him here training tomorrow. Yeah, well, of course it makes a huge difference if he comes. Don't get me wrong with my comments before. Like he makes a massive should have a massive impact on our football side. Absolutely, and we become a better team straight away having him in it. What does it do to the halves? Well, whether he goes to if he does come, whether he goes to 7 straight away, and then we then Fainu, Sullivan fight out of 6. I don't know, or maybe Caesar gets to 7 to start with, and Luai goes into 6 to start the season. I don't know. There's better people than me that will make that decision. But whatever happens, if he turns up in a few weeks' time, we're going to have a much, much better halves combination than we've had in recent times. That's for sure. And I just want to add to what you guys are saying. Like one thing, we've said this before, one thing doesn't cancel out another, right? Like it's not just the player who drives the culture. It's everything. The thing that's got to happen is the whole club has to unite for the same purpose. That's what has to happen. Benji's got to drive standards. The players have got to respond to it. We've got to get the players into the club that are capable of responding to it. And the admin have got to create the environment to allow all that to happen. When all that comes together, that's when you get success, I reckon.
Declan, you had something to say? You didn't, obviously. So I'm going to move on now. One word, boys. This is going to be difficult for a couple of you, but one word. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. We've made the top 4 in 2026. Sorry, Steve, not 2024. 2026. We've made the top 4. Jerome Luai's been our halfback. Who was our number 6, Gary? One word.
Fainu.
Steve?
Yeah, that's mine too. Fainu.
Declan, are you going to go, not rogue, but I know you like following the juniors. There was a nice little 10-minute podcast on the West Tigers official side on this Lockie Galvin. He's got some big raps about him.
Yeah, he does. I think that...
One word, Declan.
Pardon?
It's only one word.
I've given Declan some scope here because I know he's the man that follows the juniors coming through.
Yeah, I actually think that that interview was actually really interesting because he was asked what position he would want to play. And usually someone in that position would just say, I'm just happy to be in first grade. But he did say immediately that he wants to be a 6. And I think that's very telling on if we'll be able to keep him. I think he's going to be a really good player. He's definitely a first grader. And I'm sure if he's good enough to play 6 in the NRL, I'm not too sure. I actually think he'd be a really good counter to Luai because they're quite different. Luai is kind of agile and fast and steppy, but Galvin's a bit of a bigger body. He's a really good passer as well, so they would match each other. But I just think Fainu at the moment, he's played New South Wales Cup as an 18-year-old. he's probably a lot closer to first grade than Galvin is at the moment. And I think that if he didn't leave Manly, I think that Latu Finu would have played first grade last year. I think when he signed with us, they kind of put the line through him a little bit, because why would you give opportunity to someone who's not going to be there? But I think just at the moment you'd have to say Finu, because he's just a lot more advanced and like playing at the level of, like, he's been playing New South Wales Cup, he played Flegg, but Galvin hasn't even played Flegg yet, so it's kind of hard to tell at the moment where he's at.
Yeah, Glenn, I just have to say, I hate, I feel sorry for your partner, because it was only 12 months ago that you had an absolute love affair with Adam Dewey. Yet now he's not even in your conversation. He's still part of the club, Declan.
Mate, I don't know. I know you don't listen to me when we talk on podcasts, but I've said many a time that I didn't think that Adam Dewey was the right fit for the way the team was playing, and I didn't think he'd be the 5'8" going forward. And then he did his third ACL, so I'm really glad you're listening to me, Steve.
Well, that was one thing we didn't talk about. I don't think it was in Richardson's press conference, but on the radio he said, "I rate Dewey very highly." So watch your space, Steve. Don't rule him out. Declan?
Yeah, well, I actually have a South mate who's really into it, and he said that Richardson actually wanted to not re-sign Cody Walker last time and play Adam Dewey instead, because he saw him as a long-term successor to South Sydney in the 6th jersey. So yeah, I do think he rates them very highly, which is very amusing to me, because I can tell Gary is thinking about doing another petition maybe.
We don't have time to talk anymore about Adam Dewey. We got 3 minutes left. Gary, some disappointing news tonight that Junior Tupou is apparently off to the Dolphins in 2025. Just would have liked to cap off a good week without a little hit here, because I believe he's our most promising outside back outside of Jareen Buller. So I think this is a bit of a blow.
I do too. I was very disappointed to see that he's moving on. I think it's probably currently in the 10-day cooling off period as well. So you never know. Maybe we can change his mind in the next 10 days. But yeah, I am disappointed to see him go. I think he's got quite a bit of potential. I think he's got some things to work on in his game still. But I would have liked to have seen him stay for at least another contract.
You talked earlier about earning the right, and I don't know how true this is, but a couple of things I've read about this situation is that his management have come in saying they want more money and a longer-term contract than the West Tigers were willing to give him. The guy really hasn't earned that yet. He's promising. He's got potential, yes, but he definitely hasn't earned that right as far as I'm concerned. I'd much rather see a bloke come in and do the work and become successful on the field, then go in and say, how about you up my pay and give me a longer contract? So if that's true, I'm not all that worried about it in going.
I think the contract offer from the Dolphins was quite considerably larger than what the West Tigers have put forward for him.
Declan, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very disappointed. How disappointed would you be if Tupou was at the Dolphins 2025?
Yeah, I would say a solid 7.5, because, yeah, as you said, he's probably our best outside back besides Bulla, and I don't really see anyone within our squad or coming through who could replace him. I mean, I know he's raw, and he's got a few things to work on, but those skills can be acquired, and he's still really young, so you'd imagine his upside is still really high. And I understand that you don't want to be paying too much for an outside back, but I just thought the things that he brought to the table were kind of invaluable, especially in the context of this season, when he's probably he's just a walk-on starter. I mean, you just I'm not sure who would play if he wasn't there. So it's a tough one to swallow, because it's basically he's still young and his best footy is still to come. So yeah, I'm quite sad about it as well.
All right, boys. Well, I think that's just about it. If you want to say something as a sign off, put your hand up in the next 20 seconds and you'll have about 20 seconds to speak. Otherwise, I'd just like to wish all the West Tigers podcast listeners a Merry Christmas and perhaps Happy New Year. I reckon we might get back for one maybe just before the new year, Gary, but it'll be the Joel podcast. It won't be me.
It won't be you? You're not coming back if Jerome Luai signs on Christmas Day?
If the good news keeps rolling, I might be back again, Gary.
Yeah, only for good news, Eddie. Good news, Eddie.
Thank you, boys. Have a good Christmas. See you later.
Thank you.
Christmas.
Cheers, guys.